Today I'm talking with Kyle Reid, a marriage and family therapist here in Provo, Utah. And unlike previous times when we've spoken about pathologies in a family like psychopathy or narcissistic personality disorder or borderline personality disorder, family addictions, we've talked about those things before, but this is actually going to be about, what would you say, understanding each other better? Whether you end up divorced or not, but just developing a better relationship?
Yeah, I think that my purpose here is to help all couples to understand some important things that they need to know before they might consider divorce.
And some of this is going to be a little out of left field, things that as we talked about it leading up to that, I was like, I hadn't thought of it that way, but it was intriguing to me. So before we go any further and we talk about those points, please introduce yourself and give us your practice name and how people can contact you.
Sure. My name is Kyle M. Reid. I'm a marriage and family therapist. I practice here in Provo, Utah, and my phone number is 801-471-7658. You can also send me an email, and it's kylemichaelreid@gmail.com. My last name Reid is spelled R-E-I-D, so kylemichaelreid@gmail.com.
One of the things, and I don't know when you're going to reach this, so if I'm taking this out of order, go ahead and just get us back on track. But I like, I've heard sometimes people say it's not about right and wrong. And I got to tell you personally, whenever I hear that, I think, oh, that's just some flaky person engaging in moral relativism. But the way you described it helped me to understand for the first time what people mean. Now, I don't know if we're going to start with that or not, but that was one of the
Sure, we can start there.
Okay.
I decided to talk about 6 things that I felt that I think couples would really benefit from knowing when they got married. And one of them is that 90% of the time, right and wrong is just irrelevant in relationships. I think couples get really caught up in how they view the world and how they see it, that they forget that their partner might see things completely differently. And they get really caught up in what is right and what is wrong, that they forget that there is no right world. It's just perception. And to spend more time helping to understand their partner's point of view and to how they see the world and validating that and respecting that, and less time trying to prove that they're right. And when they spend more time trying to prove their points right, or to help to force their partner to see things the way that they see things, it never works. You're just going around in circles, and it just leads to more disconnection and more unhappiness.
How do you connect with somebody? I assume there must be limits. There must be some shared values or something like that. Where do you have is there a point at which you say, all right, we've got to at least have shared values and shared viewpoints on some things, or is there no such spectrum?
Well, no, I think when you're dating somebody, it's important to find somebody that has a lot of the same values as you, and beliefs, and whether that's religiously or politically or however you feel that's things that are important for you in your life. But for the most part, most of the things that I think couples argue about are things that could be resolved through just validating each other and accepting that their partner might think things differently. Of course, there's a lot of negotiation in relationships, and so if we have a bunch of money and we need to decide what to use it, and I think we should go on vacation, my wife thinks that we should put it in savings, that's something we need to talk about. But that if I spend more time trying to prove to my wife that I think vacation is the best thing for us and that I don't care about what she says about the whole saving the money, putting in savings, I'm just wasting my time, and it's just leading her feeling more unheard and more disconnected, and me feeling frustrated.
Can you tell me how that's different from the yes dear philosophy that some people have take in a relationship, where they just say, you know what, I just let the other person have whatever he or she wants. I don't fight that way, and I just kind of give up on my own.
I think that a lot of people do that, but I mean, there's really a balance with with everything in life. We can do too much of one thing, and that leads to kind of one of my points is sometimes we spend too much effort on being loved, and we should spend more effort on loving. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that we don't need to express our feelings or our needs and to get those needs met. There are a lot of people that, because of fear of abandonment, fear of rejection, the need to feel loved and accepted, they sacrifice a lot of their needs in the relationship for their partners. And I think, for the most part, they're causing more harm to their partners as well as them when they do that, especially if it's for the wrong reasons, if it's for out of fear and anxiety.
How are you doing your partner harm, though? Let's assume that you're a decent person and you've got a spouse or partner who is afraid of abandonment. So they're just lavishing attention on you and everything, and you just think you're lucky and fortunate. How's that doing me harm?
Well, because most people who, I refer to these people as rescuers because they spend a lot of their time rescuing their partner or putting their partner's needs first instead of their own. But the more that they rescue, the more that they're going to build up resentment for their partner because their partners are not going to reciprocate that. And also they're hurting their partner because you're putting these expectations in the relationship on your partner where they're going to get comfortable and used to, and you're just disabling their responsibility in the relationship.
Okay.
And it's important to make sure you express your needs and your wants in a relationship. But I think what's also important is that you spend less time and effort trying to get your needs met and more on trying to make sure your partner's needs are met and loving your partner. Because when they're at a place of their needs are met, they're going to be a lot more likely to listen to you, validate, and understand your needs as well.
So it's not a matter of just making sacrifices. Yes, there may be an element of that, but you're actually improving the relationship for your own benefit in taking care of your partner's needs.
Yes. And again, I'm not saying that you need to just always sacrifice your needs. There's a difference between needs and wants, and I think that's an important thing to distinguish. A lot of the things that we might claim are needs are more probably wants and things that we can accept. Like if I have a rag that we have in our kitchen that we use to wipe our hands after we've washed our hands, if my wife keeps on using that and wiping off the tables, and I get frustrated about it because I don't want the same rag to wash our hands to be used on the table, I can continue to get in her case about it. But is that something that is a need, or is it something that's a want? And can I just grab a new towel? Why cause more problems and more fuss and use more blame and more criticism on my wife when that's just going to lead to her feeling uncared for and unloved?
So what are these other points that we wanted to touch on then?
One of them is it takes work to make a marriage work, and marriage is not the cherry on top. It's not my life. My life can begin when I get married, or I can be happy when I get married. I can't wait till I get married because that's when I'm gonna have the happiness that I've always wanted. It takes a lot of work. It's really the end of an old life and beginning of a completely new one. It's a new way of living. It's you and your partner have totally different views. You're going to find out more about your own stuff, as well as more faults that you're going to see in your partner.
That's interesting. So you said that. I said, yeah, I've learned a lot about myself simply because I've been married to my wife. I've learned about her too because she was more of a mystery. I mean, I've been around myself all my life, but that's true that I've learned some things, good and bad. Some of my better traits and some of the things I prefer not to have confronted.
Yeah, and what I would say is to embrace those and use marriage as a way to learn and grow from the things, from our own faults, rather than covering them up and pretending they're not there and going from day to day. Marriage is about growth, about growing together with each other. It's going to take work. It's going to be hard.
And because of each other, you're going, as you pointed out, there's going to be things you can only experience, or maybe you could experience a different way, but it's something that you've never experienced before because that relationship never existed before. And it's new territory, and you're going to learn things about yourself and your spouse that you didn't want to know, but maybe, you know, that doesn't ruin the relationship. Yeah, okay.
And that actually leads to my next point, which is I think sometimes divorce is warranted. You know, there's abuse, infidelity, or sometimes people or one partner is just not willing to do or put in the work or effort into the relationship, and there's no growth happening there, so one partner might have to move on. But I think more often, I believe that relationships, I think divorce is used more often than it should. And people get really distressed, they have a really hard time, they don't know what to do, and oftentimes we want to use divorce as an escape. And we think that that's going to be our best option. We think that we're going to find a partner that's going to get our needs met, that we're going to feel loved about, or that we're going to feel loved by. And really, you're most likely just going to find a partner and repeat the same old patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And because there is patterns that you have created and that you have developed inside of yourself that you're going to be repeating in a relationship unless you get those taken care of and addressed. And divorce, I think, marriage is often like opening a door. And sometimes couples will kick the door down and pound on it and keep on kicking it until they're exhausted and the door's never going to open, when all they have to do is turn the doorknob. But by the time that they're done really exhausting themselves trying to kick the door down, they don't feel like opening the door anymore with the doorknob. And the doorknob is just really those skills and things that couples need to understand about each other and to make marriage work, to understand one another, to be able to communicate with one another. Sometimes you can develop those through a marriage. Sometimes you need some help to do that.
And you mentioned that you thought most people would, as we were talking about this and getting ready to do this, that most people would benefit from quite a bit of education or counseling or even therapy in some sense before they marry.
Absolutely.
Now, you know, there's some people that may disagree. I actually am becoming more in line with your thinking the more I practice divorce and family law.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to be more kind of like, you know, oh, come on, you know, this is natural. People have been marrying for generations, and the world just continues to revolve, so what's the big deal? But I will say one thing, is that the nature of marriage has changed. There's always been a good reason to be married, but in different times in history, the purpose and the benefits of marriage can change.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And so I do think that in today's world, it's a lot easier to marry without considering the consequences. There's less on the line. There are more safety nets, like easy divorce,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
and an affluent country if you live there. And so it's easy to abandon the enterprise when all you really needed to do was just, hey, maybe we should just try that knob. So tell me what kind of education or counseling do you think people generally would benefit from?
Well, I think just any type of education or counseling, and whether that's workshops or whether that's doing some reading on your own. I would say one of my next points is you don't have to do it alone. And I think couples that get married and they feel like they have to do it alone, and you don't. And there are people there to help, family, church leaders, counselors. But I would say if you choose to reach out and to have people help you, do it together, not apart. And counseling, I mean, I have 2 daughters, and the first thing that I'm going to do when they get engaged is I'm going to send them to a therapist, because I think they could benefit from really understanding those things about themselves and their partner, where they need to communicate better, to learn more about each other.
And to be clear, there's nothing wrong with your daughters at this point. It's not like
No.
it's not like one of them is abused or one of them is easily manipulated. They're pretty well adjusted kids. You're saying no matter what.
Yeah,
Still.
no matter what, even if they're extremely emotionally intelligent, well adjusted, it just benefits from understanding those things about your partner that you need to, because no matter how well adjusted you are, you're committing to be in a relationship with somebody that's completely different than you, that comes from a different lifestyle, from a different family, that has a different way of life and a way of living. In spite of similar beliefs that you might have religiously, there are different beliefs inside families, and it's important to understand those beliefs, and a therapist can be really good at doing that. And unfortunately, our society has led more towards being shameful of getting help and more using an escape hatch away from our problems. And it's unfortunate, because I think everybody would benefit from getting some help.
And it doesn't have to be expensive or particularly long, months of it.
Well, yeah.
But it does have to be it's really, I guess, more just to make you aware you don't have all the answers. And I think both of us could say that, having been married, right? And at least I've been married for more than 20 years. And I remember it took me 3 years before I finally realized, okay, my wife isn't wrong whenever there's a dispute, and I don't have all the answers, and it's okay to talk to other people about some of the frustrations.
Yes.
It took me through, and it was because, it's not like we had a horrible marriage, but there were a lot of petty differences that I just thought, how do I deal with them? And I wish I would have known that in advance, because I probably could have smoothed that over that much more easily and that much more quickly.
Yeah. And I would say on top of that, don't wait till you kick the door down and you've exhausted yourself to the point where you can't open the door anymore in your relationship. Get help at the very beginning and learn those skills at the very beginning, so you don't have to wait till the relationship is a disaster.
And I would think that there'd be two benefits to that, at least. And one of them would be, it's like, you know what, it would help to confirm you've made the good choice. You really are compatible. There's going to be some friction, but you still realize, like, you know what, it looks like we have made a good choice. Our eyes are open, and we're taking this seriously, and our commitment is strong. The other thing might be is that some people would realize, I've made a horrible mistake. I've made a foolish mistake. This is not a relationship that's going to work very well, no matter how much work I put into it, because you may have your eyes opened. Because there's a number of people I see that get divorced and they're like, well, yeah, there were problems here, and there were problems there, and there were problems here and problems there, but I figured that we'd get past them. And it might be nice for a therapist or a counselor to be able to just pull them aside, and even if it's just implied and not just like, oh, well, you know, that could prove to be difficult, or that could be a bigger problem than you might imagine, or something like that.
And that's why premarital counseling can be really beneficial. It can help you to understand what my goals are, what my partner's goals are, what we want from each other, and if they don't align, you can understand that, and through something like premarital counseling.
Kind of like you can realize, I didn't think that this was ever going to be an issue. I figured that everybody thought the way I did, and you can either say, this is too important for me to compromise on, and therefore we're going to call it off, or I'll examine just how important this really was. No, the net benefits are greater than this problem that this is going to be to me, or this inconvenience. And I'm trying to think about something, but I'm sure we could both think of stuff where it's like, this still bothers me about my spouse, but I'm saying, okay, you know what, it's not that big a deal. And there are things about me that I'm sure my spouse has to tolerate. That doesn't mean that I'm caving. That doesn't mean that I'm weak. In fact, it means it's a mark of maturity, where I'm saying, I pick my battles, and I can see that I'm better off in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
but that took me a long time. I figured, no, once I'd found the right woman, that it's like, you know what, we're so in tune that the only struggles we'll have will be things like loss of a job, or trying to find a good place to live, or bullies at school and stuff like that for our kids, but not interpersonal. I thought I'd conquered that, and I think a lot of young people do already.
Yeah, I agree.
What else do we need to cover then along those lines?
I would say one last thing is I think any couple can make it work as long as you're both willing to do the work. And even if you're married and you made a wrong choice, or you felt like you did, and you're not sure if the two of you are compatible enough. I hate the statements that sometimes people say that we just don't love each other anymore, or that we're just not right for each other anymore. I don't believe that. I think what happened is that we had love, we built a whole bunch of resentment on top of it, and unmet expectations, and now we don't see the love anymore. And if you're both willing to do the work, you can remove a lot of that resentment, those unmet expectations, and you can have that foundation of love like you did before. And if you're both willing to do what it takes to do the work.
How do you confront that sense of feeling like a fool, or feeling like a failure, or just fearing the unknown? I mean, I realize that's pretty deep water, but is there something you could share with people that are saying, yeah, I think I may have made a mistake, but I still want to preserve my marriage, and I can even, as trite as it sounds, I think I can learn to love this person more than I did or do now. But how do people, I mean, that's kind of being, it's pretty rough to say, yeah, you may have made you probably made a poor choice, or not as good a choice, or a hasty choice. Now work on building this relationship into something that you wanted. How do they?
Well, to build on what you were talking about with insecurities and shame and so forth, a lot of people who are very maybe controlling or overcritical in their relationships, or have high expectations with their partner, are often because of the things that they expect with themselves. And if they can learn to have compassion on themselves, they're going to have a lot more compassion on their partners. And I would say that I think one of the greatest things that I have learned in my life is the thing that I'm okay if I'm imperfect. That I don't have to be perfect. That I'm going to have weaknesses. Sometimes I'm going to get angry with my wife, or sometimes I'm going to make the wrong decision. That's a part of life. That's part of being human. I have compassion on myself. I don't tell myself that I'm a bad person, but that I tell myself I can do better, because I am better. And I move on. And if we can learn to have compassion on ourselves, we can practice that a whole lot easier on our partners.
Well, that's a great point to end on, because it shows that in the here and now, you may have some problems, but you can see beyond that mark, and that you really do. You're an important person. You have a purpose, and that you can make a relationship work if you're willing to do the work. It's not dependent on the circumstances around you.
Yeah.
You can conquer those.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that. Before we go, please give your name and contact information again, so if anyone would like to give you a call, they can know how to reach you.
Sure. My name is Kyle M. Reid. I'm a marriage and family therapist. My phone number is 801-471-7658. And my email address is KyleMichaelReid, REID, @gmail.com.
Thank you so much.
No problem.